All right. Do you just want to roll to see who goes first? I've got a
Okay. Yeah.
dice. Do you have a dice?
Yeah, I've got a dice around here. Yeah. There you go.
Okay, roll. Don't. Hey, listen to me.
Uh-huh.
If you fucking lie, I'll know.
I literally would never
Dude, I'll
compromise
kill
the
you.
integrity of this podcast for a dice roll.
All right, roll.
All right. I got a 10. Super average.
I'm not. I shit you not. Right now, I'll text you a picture. I rolled a fucking 10.
Oh, we have to re-roll. I thought you were going to say I rolled a nat 20. I'm like, you lie.
No, I shit you not. I rolled a fucking 10 too.
Okay. All right, we got to roll off.
Like
Go
roll
again.
off.
Oh, the suspense. Oh.
What'd you get?
I got a nat 1.
I got a 9, so I guess I can go first.
Yeah, that was decided.
Yeah. All right. So the first question that I have comes from Reddit. The person's name is Pony Lover with a U 2101.
Cute.
Is it possible for a dungeon master to also be a player in their own campaign? My friend and I are creating a D&D campaign. There are only 3 of us, and I am trying to think of how to make this work. I'm going to be the DM, but I would also love to have a playable character too. Thanks. I know kind of what your opinion is on this, but I mean, I love for you to really get in the nitty gritty of this. Hold on, I'm going to crack open a root beer.
That's fair. Yeah, I'm pretty passionate about this. So this is a thing. Having the DM also control their own player characters in the party is a thing that is done. It's referred to as like a DM NPC, or a DMPC? DMPC, Dungeon Master Player Character. And people do this, and I think there are valid reasons for it. I think if you have a really small group, I think that can help. I think if you have a small group and they're particularly missing something, like let's say you're playing for 2 players, and one of them's like, oh, a barbarian sounds so cool, I'm going to roll up a barbarian. And the other one goes, oh, a rogue, then we'll have like strength and stealth, so I'm going to play a rogue and I'll be all sneaky. And you're like, awesome, you have no magic, you have no heals, you have no utility spells. So they're like lacking pretty majorly in some areas, right? And so like I think that is a valid reason to add a cleric or a bard or something that you control. You have to be very careful with DMPCs though, because one, in combat, you are now taking an extra turn where you're control. So you have not only do you have to control all your enemies and your bosses and lair actions and legendary actions and things like that, you also have your own PC's turn as well. So it takes away time, even more time from the other players. Also, if your PC ever does anything like really cool or really impactful, I feel like it always lessens the experience because it's like you're controlling it, and then your player character also did the kind of impactful thing, got the last hit on a BBG, something like that. Like, you have to be really careful of those things. You also have to be careful because as the DM, you know all the secrets and the lore and the plot twists. And so you now have to control this PC that doesn't know those things. And how much does your PC interact in social settings? If you're just playing this like healbot cleric that never talks and is only there in combat, like that's kind of more understandable. But there's other ways to solve problems like that. If you feel like your party doesn't have healing, give them more health potions. If you feel like they don't have spells that they need, give them a scroll for a spell that they might need in the future. Like there's ways to get around that. And especially if you have a larger group, if you have a group of 4, 5, 6 people, DMPC totally unnecessary in my mind. Yeah. Your players are going to cover everything. They're going to have abilities. And yeah, I just personally, for me, I don't like them. It really cheapens the experience for me. I think there's already enough going on with player characters and people I want to interact with. I I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it adds much for me. I do see the reasons why it could be useful, like I said, with a small group, but other than that, it's too much.
So from experience, I have had a game with a successful DMPC. I was running it for 2 players, so there was a pretty big gap in their abilities, but I was running Monster of the Week, a system that generally probably doesn't need a bigger party, but definitely some things were missing from that. I mean, this is the one I wrote like a massive journal for it. Drew a bunch of pictures for it. Had written a bunch of lore.
Very like Gravity Falls style handbook kind of thing. Yeah, very cool.
I kind of knew going into it that I was thinking about doing a DMPC, and the only reason that I really kind of thought that it needed it going into it was because one player was brand new, and then the other player was like very minorly experienced, playing D&D like twice, but were like very enthusiastic about it. So they were both very enthusiastic. So I knew that they would be driving at all the decisions. But the part that worried me was like they essentially played. I don't remember Monster of the Week playbooks. This is embarrassing. One of them played the spellcaster one.
Yeah, Spellslinger, I think is called.
Yes, and then the other guy played. Oh my gosh, I can't remember. It was like a more niche class.
Yeah. It was like the Chosen, the Weird, the Professional, the Agent, I don't know.
It was the Professional, I think. Yeah, okay. It was the Professional. So he got like cool weapons and stuff, but he just like ended up not being that good at fighting. And then the Spellslinger is really good at fighting. Mm-hmm. But then neither of them really have like one skill that like you kind of have to have. I think it was cool.
Sure. Oh, sure.
So yeah, I kind of just had to fill that little bubble out, and
I think that makes sense.
I made it work by like they knew going into it that I wasn't going to be feeding them information with my DMPC, and I made that abundantly clear. Like, this guy knows as much as you do, so don't expect me to just be handing you things with him. And then they like eventually it worked out really well because they ended up really liking the character. Oh, excuse me. And like that character had a small arc that kind of they pushed for. Yeah. Which was cool.
Yeah, I think it sounds like the kind of stars aligned for that, and that was like a situation where it was really good. I do think that a DMPC works best as like a guide, which I think kind of sounds like maybe that was a little bit there. Yes. I love a DMPC as like hey, you're going into like an extremely treacherous area, and like I'm a, kind of ranger guide. I have some heals, things like that. It's like I'm going to help you get through this. And then as soon as you feel like they have done their job as a guide, they've got through the most treacherous area, maybe a zone that you were worried about or a boss fight that you were worried about, then the guide can, they've fulfilled their role. They can be done. If the players end up really liking them and it does work well for your group, maybe they stick around. Maybe the party wants them to stick around. Mm-hmm. And they have this character that they like now and they have some rapport with. And if not, then they can peace out. I love to torture my players, and so if they do end up liking this guide, then I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill the guide in front of them, and they're going to be so sad to lose him, and it'll feel like a loss because not only have they lost this NPC or PC that they liked, but they also lost this like mentor kind of guide that they had. Maybe they lose some heals, and then you got to give them some healing potions or whatever. But you could do some satisfying story things with a DMPC that works.
And I think have you listened to NADPOD at all?
Some of it, yeah, not very far.
They're three players, and the DM will frequently have like an NPC that will follow them along for an adventure. So the DM basically has Brian Murphy is his name. He has his own DMPC that he plays with adventure, and he has like a stat block for them. He's playing like a PC stat block with it. Like the one that sticks out to me is in their first campaign. The Old Cobb is a DMPC that Brian plays, and I think it worked like in their game. Like obviously they're incredibly skilled players and very veteran DM. It works very well, but I would agree that in most table situations it's not gonna work. And if you have 3 or more players, there's no reason to ever need one.
Yeah, I agree. 3 is kind of the line where I'm like, I could see it for 3, but like 4 players, they should be rounded enough. Like they should have a lot of things covered. I mean, I'm not saying it couldn't happen. You could have like a fighter, a barbarian, a rogue, and a monk or something. It's like, we really don't have a lot of spells or heals. Like it could happen, but more than likely it won't. And if you do feel like they're missing something, like I said, you can provide items, like healing potions, or even like magic items. Like there's magic items that give some kind of healing, abilities or some different utility. Like there's a lot of ways to solve that.
And the bigger the party gets, the definite worse it is, because each player, it's like stacking on the amount of time that each player gets to themselves, basically.
Right. Yeah.
Like if there's 3 players, 33% of the adventure is kind of like should be like your arc or something. It's kind of like the 33% focus on you.
Yeah.
But as soon 4, 25%, 5, 20%, it just the scale starts going down. And then if you add a DMPC with 4 players, you're just adding another thing that takes time in combat that people, even though they know it's a DMPC, like your players are going to interact with them.
Right. Like and that's for the best. Like if you are going to do a DMPC, they should be a real, fleshed out character that talks, socializes with the party. They have a connection with them. Like that's best case scenario, because it'll just feel extra awkward if they're just, like I said, like a heal bot, like, non-person. But like you said, then, anytime you do take to flesh them out is time away from the players and the main story. And
I found a comment. It kind of reminded me of when we played the Straw Dungeon World. I'll just read it to you. If you want to have a larger adventuring party so you don't have to scale your campaign for 2 players, you're probably better giving each player a loyal NPC sidekick. That's always worked best for me. Squire to a knight, apprentice to a wizard, loyal monk, bodyguard who has sworn obedience. They don't have to be a lower level than the PCs, just be subservient to them. This way you'll have a larger party for combat, but the PCs still drive the story. He says, with 2 players and 2 DMPCs, for best effect, the DMPCs aren't totally mindless. Have them always argue the opposite side of any issue, and be weighing both sides. So that way, that would
frustrate the hell out of me. If every time I said a plan, like the DMPC spoke up and was like, "Actually, that's a bad idea," I would.
No. I think he means the DMPCs argue with each other. The DMPCs are never agreeing with each other.
Okay, but if you're running 2 DMPCs and then you're talking,
that's a little weird.
And then they're talking to each other and you're playing them both as the DM, I'm like, I'd be, as a player, like I said, I think that would frustrate me, because it's like you're already the DM and now you're playing 2 characters who are talking to each other. You're talking to yourself. Like
that.
You just write a book, man.
That comment was from Erwin Schwab, by the way.
I do like the sidekick idea, especially like a player-controlled, like.
I mean, that's kind of what you did in that Strahd campaign in Dungeon World. Like, I had an apprentice, and someone else had a best friend, and someone else had a brother, and
So in that one, I knew the party was going to be like this rebellion that was rebelling against this tyrannical leader, which was Count Strahd. And I didn't want it to be just the players. I wanted it to be a full group of people that were kind of, going through the lands and like taking out, important kind of pieces of power for him and things like that. And because I don't like DMPCs, the way that I did that was every time I would add in different group members, and they picked up a couple people along the way, and some people started with them and things like that. But whoever had the kind of most in-depth relationship with one of the, they really were just NPCs, but with one of the NPCs, they would just get a bonus. So they didn't really have turns in combat. They would talk and socialize in like role play, and in combat, they would just give like a bonus to whoever was their kind of most favored party member. And it was just like a +1 or a +2. So then, they were helping you guys and they made you better in combat, but like it didn't really take any extra time. It was just a flat bonus, which I think worked out well. But even then, it honestly was a little much. It was a little bit much to keep track of. Not everybody connected with any of them as well as other people. Like some people had like, very close relationships with them, or even kind of like brewing romances, things like that. And that was really fun. But then other people like didn't really care. They just wanted to go kill the monsters and stuff. So
yeah,
I would just be really careful with it, and always, and this is just a good tip in general, like always be ready to pivot. If you add something because you think it's going to be fun or work well, and your players don't seem to be engaging with it the way you thought, or you feel like it's not going as smooth as you thought, you can always try something else, move it around. Like, it doesn't have to be obvious. Like I said, in the case of like a DMPC, kill him. Have the BBG kill him in front of the party and make it a big deal. But like, but just for anything, like always be willing to like quickly move a different direction, because at the end of the day, you just want your players to be having the most fun possible.
Yeah. And I think that for like, obviously for most situations, it's not going to work out. Most parties are more than 2 players.
Yeah. I would just be very hesitant to do it, only if you feel like you really need it.
I feel like an inexperienced DM might start accidentally giving their PC more of the spotlight than some of their players. And at that point, that's just like, that's not fair to your players. So if you are like thinking of running a DMPC and have started and notice that you're giving your PC a bunch of time when they, you might think they deserve it, but they don't.
Nobody wants to be like playing and then suddenly like the DMPC comes in and kills all the monsters and saves the day and saves the princess. It's like, oh, like your character, like you get to run the game and control everything, and your character like, does all the cool stuff. Like, like that's just a recipe for disaster.
Write a book.
Fun. Yeah, write a book. Exactly. If you have a world and characters, in your head that you want, to all play out a certain way and do the stuff, you should be writing a book, not playing D&D.
Now, I have heard one person D&D before. I don't know where I've heard someone talk about. I've heard someone talk about it is possible, like playing D&D alone, basically with yourself, and it actually
imaginary
being fun.
Friends. That's called the voices in my head.
I don't know where I heard that, but I have heard someone talking about that before.
There was one system that, like, in the rule book, it was talking about like one person or one DM, one player, so 2 people D&D, and that seemed interesting. There's definitely ways to do stuff like that.
One person, one player would be really interesting, actually.
Yeah, we should do it for an episode of the podcast.
That would be fucking hilarious.
That'd be fun. All right, Jake, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Do forever DMs actually want out? This comes from Reddit user AncientDig5521. My last post was asking about characters that you love but can never play. As a forever DM, I feel that. I have made so many characters in D&D Beyond that never saw the light of day. And I got a lot of comments from people saying the reason they can't play a character they love is because they're the forever DM. It made me wonder if they actually want out. I've seen a lot of jokes online about how forever DMs can never be players again, or that they are desperate to have someone else DM, and I'm curious if there's some truth to it or if it's just all jokes. I can see how, if they want to be a player, it's harder for a DM to be in multiple games because of the amount of prep work and behind-the-scenes responsibilities they have to do. Plus, a DM can't really walk out of a campaign the same way a player can, and there will always be more players than DMs, so if you're able to somewhat enjoy DMing, it can feel like you're stuck with it. So, forever DMs, if you're reading this, blink twice if you need help.
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
And I think he goes into a little bit of why. But for sure, like looking at you, like I can see when you're making characters and stuff that like you're really invested in them, but you also are constantly making characters and you're kind of in that mindset all the time. So when you're playing a character, sometimes you have that tendency of being like, oh, this character was really cool and I had a lot of fun, I'm ready for the next one.
Right. And I think that just comes from because I've DM'd so much compared to playing, like I just haven't gotten to play a lot of characters where like, you know, you guys that I've run for, like a lot of you have played like every class or, you know, have played or just have played so many characters. Like, you know, you've done a lot of the stuff, whereas like I just haven't. So it's like I start playing a rogue and I'm like, oh, rogue's really fun, but I also really wanted to try bard. And, you know, the second I go back to DMing, it's going to be another couple of years before I play again. So, you know, it's like, I think that comes from that a little bit. They're definitely like, I think this person nailed it on the head. It's like, there's definitely kind of two sides of a forever DM. There's like the forever DM that, you know, they can't go back to being a player. Like they just, you know, they're so in like the DM mindset and kind of have a hard time relinquishing that control. And then there's the ones that, you know, they do want someone else to DM. They're desperate for someone else to DM, but it just has never happened. They're not interested or, you know.
I think that dichotomy is pretty well observed in you and your dad. Because Joe is by far a forever DM and does not want to play and just
he has
wants
no
to
interest
be a
in it at
DM.
all.
And you want to DM, which is awesome. But every once in a while, you're like, God, for the love of everything that is holy, somebody please fucking DM.
Yeah, somebody run something. I want to play something. I definitely, that's when I start to get, you know, I can DM really consistently for like 8 months. And then I'm like, I'm getting a little burned out. You know, it's been 2 campaigns or, you know, maybe one really big campaign. I'm like, I need to play. And I'm actually, especially in like the last year or so, I'm wanting to play less and less. Like when we used to play, like in high school and stuff, I used to make characters all the time. Like I just so badly had so many cool character ideas, so many classes and subclasses I wanted to play that I thought were so interesting. Now I'll have like one good one in the back of my mind, and they'll just sit there for like months until I get to use them. And I think part of it is because, like, obviously you're biased to the things that, like, you know, the themes that you enjoy. So like when you create a campaign, you know, just because of the way that you process things and the things you think are cool, you're going to think that the campaign that you made is so cool. You know, you're like, I put all the best stuff in here, you know? And so of course you're going to be like, oh, I wish I could play in this campaign, you know, but you run it for your friends, whatever. But then when I do relinquish that control to somebody else, you know, like, you know, the campaign is just very different, or maybe it's, you know, not something that I would have run, or maybe there's like a lot of decisions that are made that like I wouldn't have made as a DM. So then it's hard because you're not just enjoying it as a player. You're playing it as a player and also thinking of like, oh, if I was DMing, I would have done this differently, or it would have been way cooler to do this, or I would have added this, things like that. And so you're not really getting the full enjoyment out of it. And I wouldn't say that this has happened to me as much, but there's definitely some people out there that have experienced this where it's like you maybe relinquish the title of DM to somebody, and then the campaign they run is not very good, or they're just, you know, maybe it's because they're a new DM, it's just not very good, and then you're going to feel really bad about it. And I have had not that exact situation happen, but like similar situations where, you know, especially if you have some bad sessions or you know, some people aren't having fun, the group can kind of start to fall apart a little bit. You feel like you're picking up pieces. You're like, no, I'll run something really fun. We'll have a blast.
So fast.
It can, because, you know, somebody doesn't have fun, and then they're a little bit more likely to cancel next week, and then somebody has a family event. Like it all piles up.
I have been the DM that has messed up a session, and then we've stopped playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it feels terrible. I will say it feels really bad.
But I had a campaign that went one session, and then And we never played that one again.
That one did go.
I don't think it was because I ran it so terribly. It was just there was a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
there was a lot. It wasn't a great session. I'll say that for sure. It wasn't the best I've ever done, but there was also a lot of.
I mean, it was cool. So. Yeah, it was the one with like Fenrir, right? It was like a Nordic theme. There's the wolf that like stalked us in the forest. We had that one guy that was under the table.
I don't even know what you're talking about. I'm talking about it was a Dragonlance. It was a Dragonlance campaign.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You played the evil wizard, like Emperor Palpatine guy.
Oh,
yeah.
I liked that character, but yeah, that was. I was talking about like we were in maybe like freshman or sophomore year of high school.
Yeah,
and we started to try to make a new. This is before like what ended up being our go-to group.
Uh-huh.
And like the one guy went under the table for half the session.
Yeah, we did have a guy that got bored, and so he laid under the table on his phone while we all played, and that was pretty miserable. He didn't play after that. He got invited back maybe once or twice in like a span of like 10 years. That was pretty miserable. That was on him. But yeah, it happens. You know, you have a bad session or a campaign doesn't go the way you think, and things kind of fall apart. You know, like people, if they're not having fun, they might cancel because they'd rather do something else, and then somebody else has an obligation, and then it's been 3 weeks and you don't really remember where you're at, and somebody's like, I could, you know, there's something else you could play, somebody else could run something else, and it falls apart. It happens.
That, dude, I hate the gaps in between sessions. Like, I'm playing once a week, perfect. Playing once a week is perfect. I generally remember the last session and what happened. However, once you get past that 1 week, you start getting into Jake's dumb foggy memory. Yeah, because I'm a stinky idiot, and then I can't remember what the fuck happened to my own goddamn character.
It's like 2 weeks ago, 2, 3, 4 weeks ago. You're like, man, I don't know. There was goblins. Like, it's really tough, you know, to remember all those little conversations.
And then the DM might be like, "Oh yeah, you guys did this and this," and you're like, "I did what to ago?"
Yeah, literally. And yeah, so you know that's why you always hope that your DM's taking, you know, the best notes they can, or somebody in your group's taking the best notes they can, and giving some accurate recaps. But
that's why,
or even as a DM,
that's why I started doing the recaps, was because I was like, oh, if we ever have like a time where we're like, where we know that we're going to be gone for like a session or two, no one's going to remember. I just gotta write everything that happened down. Plus, for me, it's like I put everything for DMing on a OneNote. So I save all my OneNotes. I have everything that I've DM'd.
Yeah.
And I have little synopsises for everything that I've DM'd. And sometimes I just go back and I'll just look through it. It's good memories.
Yeah, that would be fun to read through, especially because, like you said, you won't remember so much of it. So, like, it's going to sound so crazy reading through, like, the whole thing. Yeah, I love the synopses. Those are super helpful. But even as a DM, it can be hard. Like, if you haven't played 2 weeks and you're like, oh, what was that NPC's name?
I gotta get ready for this session. Oh, it's a good thing that night after the session I wrote everything down.
Yeah, that's super helpful. I would absolutely recommend that. So,
we did get incredibly off topic, though.
The question was, do Forever DMs actually want out?
I don't think so.
I think if they want out, they'll let you know. They'll ask somebody else to play.
Like for you, I know that we had like there's a big gap where you you're just like, guys, I can't DM anymore, and if we want to keep playing, like someone has to step up.
Yeah,
and
that was when like no one had run anything before. It was like only like or very few times. Yeah,
and we were basically with the guys we play now, and the only other person that had really played anything was me. So everyone was like, "Oh," so I stepped up to do something, and it was probably the only thing that saved us for playing D&D for the next, or any RPG for the next like 8 or 9 months.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just so burnt out. And so we could dedicate a whole episode to talking about like burnout and stuff, and we will. We should.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's really tough, and it is really hard to relinquish the control as a DM because the DM's role often spreads into so many other things. Like, I don't think it should be this way, but I feel like the DM is also ends up being responsible for like texting the group chat or texting everyone and like making sure they're going to be there and what time and where at, which is hard because the DM already has so many other responsibilities just getting the game ready. I don't feel like that should be their role all the time, but the DM does sometimes kind of feel like the impromptu leader of the group, which of course in game that's a little bit more accurate, but outside of game I don't think that should really be true. And it's hard to relinquish that control, especially because, so like for instance, like kind of what we're doing now, I had run a couple things and I kind of wanted a break, and we had a friend who said I'll DM a 5th edition adventure, and we said okay.
We haven't played 5th edition in like 3 years at this point. So
yeah, it's been a long. This is the first time we've played 5th edition in a long time. Actually, we're playing D&D 1.
Yeah, we're playing D&D 1, but 5th edition. I mean, it's basically the same thing.
Yeah, some changes.
Yeah.
But what happened? So he said, "I'll run this thing," and I said, "Great." And so we and then there was like a long break between while he kind of got it ready, and then people were gone for a long time, and like we couldn't get a week where everyone was available. There was always like one person gone, and we didn't want to start session 1 with somebody being gone. So it took us like there was probably like a 3-month break before we even started playing.
I think it was about 2 months, 2 or 3.
Yeah, so there was like a 2 or 3 month break before we even started playing, and now we've been playing for a while, 4 or 5 months on top of that. 4.
October?
It was October.
No.
So
November. It was after Thanksgiving. Because we're like, all right, let's just wait for their Thanksgiving to get by.
So it's been 6 months, whatever. So, which is fine, and I've really enjoyed this campaign. We're actually wrapping it up tomorrow. But my point is, I wanted a little break, and I ended up with a 6-month break, which for our group,
it's almost been an 8-month break because of the space between.
Yeah, true. Yeah, almost been an 8-month break for the space between, which is fine, and I've enjoyed this adventure, like I said, this campaign, and I've enjoyed playing, and I like my character, but I didn't intend to take an 8-month break, for sure. So that was a lot more than I bargained for, and for some groups, not everybody plays, as often as we do, or, things like that, and so, like, an 8th-month break or 6-month break, like, that could, your group might be done playing by then, so... it's hard. It's a hard thing to do, to relinquish that control and that scheduling and all that planning to somebody else. You have to have a lot of trust in it, for sure.
I will say, for all the games that I have played, I feel like every time that I've DM'd and then gone back to a player, I think it makes me a better player. And I think that's true vice versa. Every time you DM for a while and then you play, it makes you a better DM. And I think it just, like, sometimes for that forever DM, that puts you in the mindset of your player for a little while to see how they feel when they fuck up a roll or something bad happens or someone shits on you.
Yeah.
And
somebody
gets
shits on
you. Well, you know what I mean. Metaphorically shit on. Not metaphorically, not literally shit on. Although possibly literally shit on. Sometimes you're rolling that one and falling shit and... Everyone laughs at you. But that little, like, that, however long it is, of you relinquishing being a DM, makes you see the point of view of the player a little bit easier. Because sometimes it can feel like DM versus player.
Yeah, if you're having a bad day, like, it can feel bad, yeah. The
DM
like hits you with an ability, player. And you're like, me, like, yeah.
So I think that gives you a little bit more empathy towards not only players being able to give more empathy towards the DM, and I think all players should DM at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I think it definitely is enlightening to see how much work actually has to go into making a good campaign.
Yeah,
and then when you are in a good campaign as a player, it makes you appreciate it that much more.
Yeah. And like not only the like work, like backloading work, but like the work during the session. Like you have so much stuff in the air and you have to like, lead them in the right direction, kind of helping them, obviously like the players are guiding the story, but like it's not exactly. I mean, it could be a full sandbox campaign, but a lot of times you have to kind of help them figure out where to go. You can't just drop them in their master world and say go. Maybe sometimes you can. Some players might enjoy that, but at least for our group, like I kind of let you guys know, like where the interesting stuff is, what's going on in the world, where some interesting, objectives are and stuff, and you guys can kind of pick, how you do those things. But
I don't even think we've done a full literal sandbox campaign. It always ends up being like we do like an adventure or something. And then we're like, okay, let's try to like maybe like I think one time we were like mercenaries and we would go to a job board and we're like, okay, we're gonna get this job, and then one of the jobs just ends up like stretching out really far, and that just becomes the campaign.
Right. Yeah, or like some player's backstory comes into the kind of view of it, the focus, and you do that
more linear.
Yeah, because you end up focused on a thing. But I mean, like, I don't know. I don't know if we've ever done like I don't think very many people do a true like Grand Theft Auto style sandbox. Like, I think as soon as your players latch on to a storyline that's interesting, and you kind of are going to follow that and flesh that out. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, I can't even. Like, I've kind of thought that my stuff was sandboxy, but now that I kind of think about it,
I think it starts as a sandbox, and then you like wait to see what the players are interested in and what they want to follow, and then you like really flesh out like those couple like adventures that they have started, and then then they kind of come together for one final climactic thing, and then that's like the end. Because like I don't know, at least for me, like I don't have the time to prep every adventure in every city, every NPC, every shop, like, because we've had campaigns where like I make a city and then you never go there, which like it just doesn't ever become super necessary, like, and I'm sure everybody's had that. So it's like, and you could do things to, kind of negate that. You could, put essential things in each city or whatever, like, you can have your players explore more by tying it into the story. But yeah, it's you don't want to do too much work as a DM that never gets seen. You want to try to minimize that just for your own sanity,
Yeah, and I think the like key takeaway of like if do forever DMs want to play, I think sometimes they do. I think sometimes they
you should
don't.
Ask everybody. Ask your DM, hey, do you want a break? I would love to try running something. Even if you've never done it before, you should try.
Even if you only run something for 3 sessions
or one,
make
just
it
a one shot.
One shot. Make it a really good 3 sessions. Put your back's work into it. Now, I'm like, I've in my few times DMing, whenever I DM, I kind of go all out. So it's a lot of work for me because I really like having cool things, physical things that you guys can use.
You love the physical handouts.
Yeah, I spend quite a lot of time making like physical handouts for you guys, and I think it makes the story more interesting. It definitely like captures your attention. Like when I pull a note out of my bag and hand it to you and you read it quietly to yourself, I know what that note says. It makes me happy, but no one else can hear you quietly reading it to yourself unless you choose to read it to the party. Right. And like that, I feel like that's way cooler than just saying, "Oh, and the note reads this." And like, I mean, I have access to a printer and I know how to type, so it's really not that hard to make little things like that. But I have made like big things too. Mm-hmm. One player was a Circle of the Stars druid, I believe.
Yeah,
and I made like a constellation map that would lead them to whatever their arc was, but that
was the campaign that we didn't finish. And
I fully think that it was because like all of us had kind of different expectations of what was going to happen, and then a couple of expectations didn't get met, and then I ruled poorly on one thing, and then
Yeah, there is a lot that goes into it. And that's the thing is like it's not like one mistake that ends the campaign. It's like there's like it can be so many things. It's like scheduling things plus, people's you get upset about stuff, and yeah, it's like it's a huge snowball by the end of like things that have come to the end. But yeah, you do great on those physical handouts. But like you said, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
So if you've never run something before, you should try it. I think it'll give you, like you said, I think it'll give you a lot of respect for your DMs. If you are a DM and you're feeling burnt out, feel free to ask your players, if they could try it. And if they don't love it, or if it doesn't go the way people expect, if your group is like, then you can come back to it. But you should try to give yourself a break if you can. Or if you're interested, or if you're like, no, this is my role, I am the DM, more power to you, man.
I mean, even then, if you've never played before,
I don't think there's a DM there that's never out there that's never played. I mean, I guess there probably is, but that seems crazy.
There might be a literal forever DM where they've never done that.
If you are a true-blooded forever DM and you've never played, I think at that point you just gotta stick it up. I think you gotta hold the title.
Hold that record.
Yeah, you gotta hold
31
that,
years, never played.
Yeah, don't you dare even roll up a character.
Went to my goddamn deathbed, started when I was 11, died, never played one game.
Yeah. All right, I have a final question here I think could wrap us up. This is honestly, I'm very curious about your answer because this is honestly a question I have asked, a Reddit post I've looked for myself as a DM. And this is, how do you reward engaged players without putting them on a pedestal? This comes from XValicX. Hi, I'm currently running a D&D campaign with 5 relatively new players. One player in particular has shown exceptional interest in her character background, going as far as wanting to do some one-on-one sessions where we just play out some backstory stuff to really flesh out the character. Just giving me a lot of meat to work with as a DM. The other players are all engaged while playing. Some have done light character building, but nothing to this level. How do I support this really engaged player while making sure not to put them on a pedestal just because the other players don't have this exceptional level of ambition? Any advice would be great. And I'll broaden this out a little bit. Sometimes you just have a player that's just so into it. They're just emotionally invested. They're sad when the sad stuff happens. They're screaming and they're excited when the nat 20s hit, things like that. They're so into it and they're so into the role play and they, they're just incredibly engaged. And it's like, how do you reward that person without picking favorites?
That's hard. This person says they've had one-on-one sessions with the player. That's a new level. Crazy in my mind. Yeah. Keagan, I love you. You're my friend. I don't want to just sit here and play D&D with you for 5 hours.
It's not a 5. It doesn't have to be 5 hours.
We play D&D for 5 hours at a time.
Yeah, but the one-on-one session doesn't have to be 5 hours. But I can see this. I could see it being fun to hey Jake, you're running this campaign. I have this character. Could we maybe not play D&D, but sit here and at least talk about backstory stuff and flesh it out more.
That's fine. We've done that before.
I think you're confused on the verbiage. They just said do one-on-one sessions. It says play out some backstory stuff. Yeah. But I think but this what we're doing right now is a one-on-one session. We're having a one-on-one session, talking or sitting down to meet is a session. I don't know if it's a full D&D playing.
Playing D&D with just you and one other. I know we talked about it at the beginning. It might be fun.
It'd be fun.
It'd be fun for an episode of this. I'll say that. But just for a game, I don't think I'd ever want to do it without at least one other person there. Especially for me, I don't go into campaigns with a backstory usually ever anymore. I found
it just a you thing though.
I know. I found it so tedious. Oh, this is my character and this is his tragic backstory that makes me so depressed every time I play him. So I found it a lot easier just go into the session being this is his name, this is the class he's playing, and this is maybe what he looks like, and maybe a general theme for a character.
Well, and you have found success in that because you are good at finding interesting arcs that present themselves in the campaign and latching onto it. You will find a god that you can start worshiping and get in a complicated relationship with, and it becomes a big thing in the campaign. Like, you are able to find those things because you're experienced.
Is that?
But hold on.
I want to get at that.
Okay.
I want to fight you there. If you go into D&D with a 5-page backstory, you cannot get those situations. You've already given your character what they're going to be and what they're going to do.
That's not true. There's always time to change, man.
I
think it depends on the focus of what you write in your backstory, but you are very good at finding those like story hooks and those, not a character backstory, but definitely a character arc and story that you tell. But some people might not be as adept at finding those things or not sure what they can interact with or to what level. And so having a backstory can definitely be a really great starting point for, how this character might feel or act or what they might do, because, not everybody's going to figure that out on the fly, improv that. Some people might need a starting point of like, okay, well, you come from a background of crime. And so, you might be interested in the criminal underworld and know some stuff about it. Like that's just a good role play starting off point, things like that.
I'm like a backstory like that, like what you just described. I come from the criminal underworld. This is like maybe a thing or two that has happened to me that's pivotal. Like that, I think is all the backstory you should have. I feel like a lot of players are making like super huge complex backstories, and then when things don't get touched on, they get really disappointed, and then that ruins their perception of playing, and then they don't want to play anymore. And I think we've had a player that has done basically exactly what I've just said.
I know what you're referencing, but I think the problem there is if you do like writing a backstory and you like getting really into it for like what this character has lived and done before the adventure starts, I think you need to be really careful. You shouldn't expect the DM to include all that stuff in the main story or have it all come back up. It's great if that can happen and that works for everybody, but I don't think you can go in expecting that or expecting certain situations because of what you wrote in your backstory. I think your backstory should only be for you. It should be for you to reference for like, this is what my character is. This is how I know how to role play them and how I know how to play them because I took the time to flesh out where they come from. And so this is how this person is. I think that is where it should end. I think it is then the DM's decision if they see that backstory and like, that's super cool. And then they include things, they tie things into the main story. That has to come from them, and you can't expect that or go on planning that.
And I think
I definitely agree.
So rewarding a good player,
a super engaged player,
obviously this person that this Redditor was talking about is super involved and wants to and really wants to get into the game. That should show when they play, and I'm sure it does. But that's like all the reward that I really need is that I know that I really enjoy my character and that I'm playing my character to the best of my ability. Why do I need more?
I don't think that it's that you need more. I just like I've had a lot of players that are not as engaged, or sometimes barely engaged at all. Sometimes they lay under the table on their phone. They're so bored. Or things like that happen. And so I appreciate so much when a player is so engaged and they are loving the story and they're really acting out their character in role play and doing really cool stuff in combat and getting super creative. Like, I appreciate it so much as a DM that I want to show them how much I appreciate it. I can tell them, I could send them a text and say, hey, you have been so much fun to play with. And that is a great start. But sometimes
I think that is like, if you haven't even ever sent me a text to be like, you are fantastic. I know, but I know. I see the way you look at me with those big hearts in your eyes.
Always, man, always. But I think
like yeah, shoot him a text, be like, hey, like, you're killing it. You're awesome. Keep it up. Like that's more than enough for me.
That's fair. I don't know. I think it would just be nice to have something. You can obviously like there's like inspiration points in 5th edition or D&D 1, like those are built in. Those are great. You know, they can spend it to get advantage. If you want to create a little bit more of an in-depth system, like, you know, maybe you give out like physical little tokens. Like anytime somebody does something really creative or, you know, really is engaged with the story, you give them a little token and they can spend it for something in game advantage or something else. You know, talk to your players about it. Like make sure it feels fair and that it feels fun for them. Because that could encourage other players to get as engaged. It could get to that level, you know. If they see one player getting all these tokens to spend and then they get advantage and then they play even better because, you know, they're rolling better or things like that, like they might go, oh, I got to get into this now. You know, I'm going to, you know, make some really cool character decisions. Like that could be really fun. You just want to make sure that, it's not all about one player and that, you know, it's not, you've not put the spotlight on one person. You want to share the spotlight and give everybody a chance.
As soon as you single out one player and be like, this person is playing exactly how I want them to, that makes, like, that could make everyone else, like, there's an option, if you're giving some kind of incentive, could motivate your party to play in a similar way, which I don't think is always the best thing. Or it could also... I
don't think it's a similar way. It's just being more engaged. However you do that. However you're engaged.
Or it could demoralize them. Make them think, oh, I thought I was doing really well, and I don't get any of these cool tokens that the other person gets ever.
That's true. That's true.
So I don't know. Yeah. I think keep it to like personal text. Like, don't... I don't want to say, like, don't show affection for your players in front of your other players, but, like, don't put them on a pedestal while you're playing with everyone else.
That's what the question's asking, man. It says, how do I reward an engaged player without putting them on a pedestal? That's the exact question.
Yeah. So, don't. Just don't put them on a pedestal. Let them play
That's
how
what
they
he's asking. What does that mean?
I think what that means is don't make everyone else feel bad for not being that player.
But that's not rewarding the player. That's not making anyone else feel bad. It says, how do I reward an engaged player without putting them on a pedestal? You're saying text them and say
text them and say you're doing a great job. A compliment goes a long ways for most people. You would be absolutely astonished how many people don't get complimented during their weeks. And if they play, and if they go and play D&D with their friends and the DM texts them afterwards, they're like, hey, that was fucking rad as shit what you did there. Like, that could make someone's week right there.
I agree. I think that's great. But I think you can go further with it. I think that's where we disagree.
What do you think you could do to go further? That isn't singling out that player as, like, to everyone else, and that could make everyone else feel bad.
Well, I think, like I said, inspiration points are a great start. Or like a similar system, like I said, with tokens that are equipped similar to an inspiration point. I think involving it, if you're, you know, want to involve player backstories, you know, looking into their backstory and finding things that you can kind of bring up into the main story will feel very rewarding to the player as, you know, who's really engaged. Obviously, try to include everybody's stuff if you're involving player backstories, but, like, you know, having, you know, their piece kind of, you know, have a big moment, you know, where it is in the spotlight, you know, and then obviously, you know, you want to get to other moments where other people get the spotlight too, but, you know, maybe early on, maybe their thing kind of becomes a big part. Things like that. I don't want to make any player feel bad, but when you have a player that really is engaged to that next level, like I definitely want them to know that I appreciate it for sure. Yeah. And I do think, I do agree that a text, like just telling them how much you appreciate that is a really great starting point, but I do think you can go further with it without making other people feel bad.
Yeah, and
don't give them like levels. Don't be like, you're level 10, everyone else is level 5, and you have a holy avenger. Like, don't do that for sure.
Yeah, so I'm coming from the player standpoint, who is the player that is very invested, and I think the best way that maybe you could do it is maybe get in contact with that player and be like, okay, some people aren't as invested as you. Why don't we try to set up something with your backstory and you kind of hinted at this, something with your backstory and give you this really big moment that might inspire them to get a really big moment.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like you're the example and then everyone else can follow through. I feel like that would, if I was another player, that wouldn't, if that person got through their story thing first and it was awesome, I wouldn't feel so bad.
You'd be like, my time is not now. They got through their story.
They got through their story, so now it's my turn.
I know mine's coming up. Yeah, I think that's cool. I think that'd be great.
I don't. But other than that, I don't see many other ways you can do it.
And if you are the player, like you were saying, if you are the player that's really engaged, you should be amping up your other party members. You should be amping up the other players to get them involved. You should be sharing that spotlight. Try to.
I try to do that.
If you role play a lot, involve them in your role play. Pull them right into it. Be like, I come up to this person while we're long resting.
Yeah,
and I start
there's a
talking.
lot of times, especially recently, where. I mean, we've had like one player that's iffy sometimes, and like I've tried my damnedest to just like pull them into something and be like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" and try to get them more into it.
Yeah, if somebody doesn't want to, though, they just then they won't.
Yeah.
They have to want that too. But hopefully, you have players that want to all be involved and having fun. And try to rope them in if you feel like you're at a different level. Try to rope them in on stuff. Even in combat, man. Like instead of rolling to hit the dragon with your axe again, try to do something else. Try to yell out an inspiring thing to your teammate that gives them advantage, and maybe they land a super big blow, or cast a spell on them that makes them really powerful. Like really involve everybody and try to amp everybody up.
Definitely don't play favoritism if you're the DM in that situation. That could be definitely the worst thing you could do, is just be like, this is my favorite player, and everything revolves around them.
You already have one player who's engaged at a different level than the other players, and if the
DM
higher level and you give them a holy avenger
with that player at a different level, then it makes everyone else.
Yeah,
lower.
you make them higher level, and you give them the Holy Avenger, and you bring all their backstory stuff into it, and like no one else is getting the spotlight. Then they're going to feel horrible. They might even quit. And now you're also trying to figure out how to play D&D with one DM and one player. So it's full circle. So you're going to have to learn. Yeah, I agree.
All right. I think that's a good stopping point.
It all came full circle.
This is a
long one.
It's a long one.
I thought that last question was going to be like a real quick one, and it wasn't.
Wasn't. It wasn't. I yelled at you, and I apologize.
Hey, that's the show, man. I think it's way more interesting and way more fun when we have vastly different opinions on something. Mm-hmm. That sparks interesting conversation. I think it'd be really boring if every single question I was like, I think you should do this. And you're like, yeah, I agree. You should do that. All right, what next?
Yeah.
That's boring.
I think my mic peaked at that spot, so I'm going to have to edit around that. So I guess it's fine that it's my fault. All right. Well, if you guys enjoyed, be sure rate us 5 stars. If you're watching this on iTunes, the rating on iTunes is a big thing. That's how you get monetized and shown around to everyone. Comments, if you really enjoyed it, please leave us a comment. Everything is going to help us kind of spread the word of the show, and the bigger the word gets of the show, the more enthusiasm that we get into it. Not that we're not enthusiastic right now. Obviously, I yelled at you.
You yelled at me. That is enthusiasm. That's exactly the kind of enthusiasm. We're invested, man. We're the engaged players.
I
am so excited to hear.
We're still waiting for that first. We're still waiting for that first email question, though.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say, if you're emailing a question and it has something to do with like a story, if you could like make it brief, a paragraph at the most, and that gives us plenty of time that we could read your story and talk about it.
I'm reading it. Send me the essay, man.
You can give Keagan the essay,
your life story. I'm reading it,
and Keagan can make the synopsis for it.
No, I'm reading it in full.
No,
I'm gonna add details that they didn't even put in. I'm making it long.
We're gonna act it out. I'll be the voices, and you,
it's
narrate.
Gonna be fully acted.
It's 27 minutes of the person's story, and then 15 minutes of us being like, "Oh yeah, I think you were wrong."
Yeah. Yeah, so I would really love to hear from some people about if you've experienced any of the things we've talked about, or you just have a funny story or a question that we can answer. You want some advice on? I would love to hear from you guys. Our email is in the description, northwoodpod@gmail.com, I believe.
Go ahead, watch our other show, The Northwood Project.
Mm-hmm.
Northwood Project. I love The Northwood Project.
It's good, man. There's good stuff in there. You should go check it out. If you like horror anthologies, it's spooky. It's good stuff.
All right. Well, anyways, I've been Jake, and this is my buddy Keagan. Bye.
Bye.